We're going to go ahead and get started. And I know I've been saying this for about 3 months, but if you look at the Penn Branch signs, they still say Penn Branch meeting 7 p.m., even though several months we moved it to 6:30 p.m. and we moved it to 6:30 p.m. Because of people with children. So I can almost guarantee you that the way this is going to work is that you'll see another group of people like the last meeting, where by 7:15 it was full of the 7 o'clock crew. But because you all have gotten here on time, I want to make sure that we start fairly on time, and I'm kicking myself because I'm 9 minutes late starting. So I want to officially bring the Penn Branch Citizen Civic Association meeting of November 14, 2017 to order. And thank you all for coming. Thank you all that came early, that came on time. So a couple of things before we start the meeting that you'll notice. So we did order some new Penn Branch signs. So you'll see those 7 o'clock signs. They will disappear. And so we'll be in line with the actual time that the meeting will start for 6:30. The other thing is, hopefully most of you all would have received some copies of the newsletter that went throughout the neighborhood. We have a lot of changes. We talked about the newsletter. It's one of the things people wanted to see. And we have to thank Megan LaGraff, who is sitting inconspicuously in the audience over here. Megan, hold your hand up, for doing the newsletter. And Megan is going to keep the newsletter regular. It's distributed on the web. It's on our website, and it's also on our listserv. And so there are several ways you can get to us. We have a MailChimp distribution list. We have a listserv. You can go on our website and sign up for the newsletter, and you can also sign up to become a part of our listserv. And the difference with the listserv is the listserv allows more real-time conversation. The MailChimp is just one-sided information. And then the website, now that we have a superwoman, Megan McGrath, to update the newsletter, the website in turn is being updated too. So it's all to improve our communications and recognize, again, a lot of things are happening in this neighborhood. We want to make sure you know real time, whether it's anything having to do with Penn Branch or Penn Hill Shopping Center, or just something that happens in the neighborhood that we want people to know. So again, we're going back to just improving the communications there. So we have a full agenda today. As you know, we have Marshall Heights Community Development Organization, David Retland, who's sitting right here, who will do a presentation. And we also have Councilwoman Anita Bond, who's going to get here about closer to 8 o'clock. And then we have our famed Lieutenant Jameson, who's going to open up. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the meeting, but I think we just want to make sure, why don't we do this, take care of a few key items. So we'll start with the treasurer's report, if that's okay. Matt, are you ready to do the treasurer's report?
Yes.
Okay.
I think someone.
Okay, we'll start with the treasurer's report. And then next we'll start with Lieutenant Jameson. Thanks, Matt.
Good evening, everyone. This is the Treasurer's Report for the time period of 10/11/2017 to 11/14/2017. During that time period, we had $245 in new deposits for membership and $35.33 outgoing for September Park cleanup. So a pretty boring month. We had an ending balance of $1,652.15. There's probably additional membership that hasn't been processed yet as well that will go into this. It'll be updated. So that's it. I'd like to submit it for approval.
I move that we approve the report as read.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you,
Thank
Sam.
you. I'll leave one of those here.
Crime in 605 is pretty is down. Violent crime is down by 67%. Property crime has stayed steady at 0% for total overall crime decrease in PSA 605. I'll go over some of the specific crimes for you. There was one ADW, 7 Lavaca Ridge Road. There was just one robbery, 32 Lavaca Penn. There were no burglaries in 605 the last 30 days. We had 4 stolen autos, one in the 41 block of Southern Avenue, 13 block of 29th Street, 5 block of Hilltop Terrace, and the 45 block of Alabama. There was 7 theft from the autos, 3,000 block of Penn, 4,000 block of Alabama, 42 block of Mass, 18 block of Fort Davis Street, 7 block of Ridge Road, 2500 block of Minnesota, and the 1500 block of Anacostia Drive. And that's the crime stats for 605 in the last 30 days, which is not too bad. One couple quick things, the holidays are coming up. I suggest everybody protect their property. Also, don't leave bags in the car. Some of these theft models, people still leaving laptops and pocketbooks and credit cards and cash and everything. People still leaving keys in the ignition to go pump gas and presumably down on 295 before you know it. Halfway in Baltimore before we get on the scene. Please do not do that. People are out here just to rob you. That's what they do every morning. If you interview some of these guys, they'll tell you they've been doing this for 15 to 20 years. They're professionals just like we are, or us professionals in our jobs. So please protect yourself. Also, too, for you all that don't know, all MPD officers are wearing, and sergeants are wearing body cameras. So every interaction you have with the police department will be on the video. Our supervisors and sergeants have tasers. We have used it numerous times already, and that was in lieu of using deadly force, so it does work. And also we have less than lethal force, which is a beanbag, which stings like you're getting shot and it doesn't actually kill you. So our department is kind of moving to the less than lethal stuff instead of going straight to deadly force in some situations, trying to take a proactive response to some of the situations that we go across every day. Some people like get locked up and they don't go willingly, but you're going to go. If we have to use force, we will. But we try to use that as minimum as possible so nobody get hurt, and we don't want to get hurt either. Okay. Also, the program for the surveillance cameras is still going on. For those who don't know about that, for reimbursement up to $500. That's still happening. So, and those videos have been very instrumental in solving various crimes in 60. There's over I think now 150,000 private security cameras in DC that we have access to. That's a lot of cameras. So when you walk out the house, you stand a very good chance of being on someone's camera, regardless of where it's at. Even the speed cameras, the traffic cameras, all that stuff we got access to. Okay. So is there any questions or comments or concerns I mean we need to be aware of in our neighborhood? Yes, all the way back there. We don't track that every day. No. The court might have, or CSOs, but not every day. All right.
So Jameson,
Sure.
the recent gun legislation that the city lost, is that affecting MPD?
It will. The city decided not to fight the gun law in court or take it to the Supreme Court. What it basically means is that we probably have, in the very near future, people carrying concealed weapons and be permitted to do that. So that's what that means. I don't know if it's good, bad, or indifferent, but it could be a problem because you might pull up next to somebody and you cut them off and they got a concealed weapon. They might decide to pull it out on you. I can see that happening. So yeah, the city's not going to fight it. The main reason they say they weren't going to fight it because they don't want to endanger other states' laws as it relates to guns, because this will be a Supreme Court case. And in fact, if they did it, they decided to drop it. So I don't believe DC is going to be fighting any more challenges to the gun laws in DC. Any other questions?
Mr. James,
Yes, sir.
question for you. I know a few months ago there were cases of the a couple individuals bringing in sheds. You have an update on the what happened with I believe they were captured, right?
Right, yeah, they were captured over the summertime. The meeting was in recess when they were captured. Two of my main officers captured them actually breaking into a shed, and after we debriefed them, I think they pretty much fessed up to like 35 or 40 of them. However, they were released. One had one out in PG County. I'm not sure if PG County picked them up. The other one was released on PUR. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any updates on the concealed gun law loosening? Over the last 2 months, there's been like a lessening of the restrictions on concealed guns. 6
Right.
months ago, we had to like give a reason, and now you don't anymore. Are you seeing an uptick in concealed gun license?
Request? Yes.
Are you guys quantifying that? Are you then correlating it to like deaths and things?
I think it's too early to tell that yet. I'm sure it might be a possible, that nexus will probably happen. I think it's been like 3 or 4 months since they're deciding when to drop, or when to drop. You know, you have to have a reasonable, reason to carry a concealed permit. But no, it's steadily weakening. The Keller, which was the Supreme Court, they, DC, to them, DC was putting up all sorts of very spare arms, and they kept it going to court and going to court and going to court, and the city pretty much gave in. So I'm sure that there's going to be a nexus between that, so, yes, ma'am.
Why were the perpetrators of the shed break given to police?
That's up to the judge and the U.S. attorney. We don't really control that. And I'll be honest with you, for theft, unless you have prior history, which I'm sure they probably do, they're not going to believe that. Sorry. Any more questions?
Yeah, so back to the shed, is there any way to just track how, what happens at the end of the day?
Yeah, I will find out exactly what the disposition cases are in the court, and let you all know as soon as I do know. Hopefully they do some time, but I will not hold my breath. And I'm just being honest. I've been doing this 29 years, I can tell you. I've seen murderers walk out the front door of the courthouse. It just happens. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, well, everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. I don't think we come back. I guess Christmas is the next time we get back.
Christmas party.
Christmas party, right. I'll definitely get back to that. I like to eat, as you can tell. I don't cook, but I like to eat. And I'm not skipping the meals, trust me.
Lieutenant Jameson, thank you very much. So what we'd like to do now is bring on our first guest. We have David Retland of the Marshall Heights Community Development Organization, Incorporated. And if you haven't heard of Marshall Heights, Marshall Heights has been active in our area of Ward 7 for a long time. Part of what they do is really try to advance development and a welcoming environment in Ward 7. They're not new. Recently, they've increased their participation in Ward 7. They've always been here, but they're increasing their visibility, I should say. David Retland, who I know has been very active in Ward 7 Democrats. He's not new to this area at all. So we thought it was a good idea, given a lot of the changes you see happening in the rest of the city, is to have David come and do a presentation about the development here, about what Marshall Heights does. Marshall Heights is not just limited to one part of Ward 7, we cover all of Ward 7. So David, welcome, and we start your presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. So, give you, so first of all, I want to say thank you for inviting us out this evening. Let me talk about a little bit about myself, and then I'll go into the presentation. So, first of all, I live in Washington, D.C. I live in Ward 7. I live right down the street. So when you get to, I pride myself when you get to Randall Circle. So I call it the only circle in Ward 7. I live right on the circle. I've been there since about 2000. So I'm very engaged with this community, and have been engaged for probably the last 20 years with Ward 7. So I have a passion. And that brought me to Marshall Heights. And I'll just tell you a quick story, and then I'll drive into the presentation. So how did I get to Ward 7, Washington, D.C.? I just always like to share that. So when I came here, I was in the military, Air Force. I was in civil engineering. So I PCS'd here in 1998 out of Warner Robins, Georgia. and you ever made the transition from a small town to a bigger town, it's kind of daunting. So I brought my family. I said, I have a son and a daughter and my wife. And I said, we're going to Washington, D.C. We just got orders, 1998. And we need to look for a house because I worked in the East Wing of the White House under the Clinton administration. So we got here, and I took my daughter to school, and I took my son to school. The school that was the neighborhood school was Ballou and Hart. My kids almost had a heart attack when they walked in. They went from Warner Robins, Georgia, to Hart and Ballou. So I walked in with them, and I said, hey, here's a 9th grader, and here is a 7th grader. And my son came home every day on time as prescribed, and he ran home. So I said, how did you get home so fast? He said, Dad, I don't stick around after school. I hightail it home. So, but we were living over on Bowling Air Force Base, and I said, okay, it's time to get out of the cocoon and find a place. So we looked around, we went to Fairfax. They said they had great schools. We went to Montgomery County. We tried Charles County. It was just too far. And then we ended up in Mitchellville for probably about a year. And I said, and I used to drive and find different routes to work. So I would come down 214 where they always gave me a nice speeding ticket because I always ran late. 214 and taking the Constitution around Arcade right into the East Wing. Then I used to cut through 490. I used to take 495 to 295, come up 295, down, make that circle, Constitution, take you right in. Then I tried this other route. I call it the very curious route. Pennsylvania Avenue, made a left on Minnesota, went around the circle, through the park, over Texas, over the East Capitol, straight up Central, and then I got home. And every time I came around the circle, I saw these 2 houses. How many people have been around over 20 years? You can raise your hand. And they go, okay. It was 2 houses on Randall Circle that was boarded up. I said, man, why doesn't someone buy these houses and fix them up? So I said, I'll look into it. So I looked into the houses, and I said, well, told my wife, what do you think? She's like, you can live there, but my kids and I are going to stay where we are. This is in 98. I said, okay, fine. So we bought the houses, we bought both of them. And I had a bright idea, and I came home one day, because the husband always gives a bright idea. Do I have a deal for you? We're going to fix those houses up, and we're going to move into them. She was like, you're going to move into them. I'm staying out here. The kids are staying in school here, and enough said. I said, so here's the deal. What if I make them look like any other house that you've ever been? Matter of fact, better. So there were 4-unit apartment buildings and 2-unit apartment buildings. I gutted the 4-unit, turned into a single family, and I said, hey, here's an opportunity. So, long story short, I convinced them to move on Randall Circle, and we moved in like 2000. And I convinced my son to go to Friendship. I said, hey, that's a charter school. It's a great school. You'll do well. You don't have to run very far. You just catch the Minnesota Avenue bus and you're home. He said, all right, Dad, I'll give it a shot. So we moved in, and my kids just did exceptionally well. My son is an attorney now. He's married. He's a JAG officer in the Army. My daughter's finishing her PhD at Howard University. She's director of research, and I couldn't have asked for a better community. Has there been challenges? Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's great to see you engage in the community meeting to help make a change and make a difference. Fast forward a little bit. So how did I get involved in Marshall Heights, and what is Marshall Heights? So part of my learning curve was, I was angry a little bit. I admit that I got to be angry because I didn't understand why paper and trash and all those things were just so pervasive. But when I went to work, everything was so pristine. So I got angry. So I said, who is this? What is a council member, and where is he? And that was in Kevin Chavis was the council member, so I painted some signs and said, hey, we need to make a change. Got this guy to knock on my door named Vince Gray. I said, what do you want? Are you going to clean up this paper and make things better? And he gave me a few promises and, kept engaging. And fast forward, saw the city go through some changes. There's a lot left to be done in this community. And then I said, if I'm going to make a difference, I guess, I'll find out there's a community organization. I was the vice chair of Fort DuPont Park Civic Association, I think, for 7 years. And, but I found my passion in Marshall Heights. And they invited me to a meeting and gave me some cookies, and the next thing I was the treasurer. So the point is, if you don't want to be held a position in a corporation in Ward 7, don't take the cookies. And then, after I ate the cookies, a few years later, I became the chairman of the board. So I said, wow, don't eat the cookies and don't come back for a second meal. It'll be all right. So, what is Marshall Heights? Marshall Heights is the Community Development Corporation. We say organization, but it is a corporation. It's a corporation incorporated in the District of Columbia, has a long legacy and a long history. It's been here since 1979. It's probably done more development here than any other single developer in Ward 7. And can you go on the presentation? Our staff, we have about 10 staff members. We have, I think, 8 staff members, total full-time staff members, 2 part-time staff members. And I would be remiss if I didn't introduce my colleague, Mrs. Vivian Mercer. She'll be driving the slides today. She's part of our staff.
Hello, everybody.
So we've been here since 1979. We were here when development wasn't cute and development wasn't sexy. No one wanted to come across the bridge. We were the group that helped found East River Park. Used to be the shopping center and bring the Safeway here. And you can read some articles about that. There was no Safeway, no grocer, until we brought Safeway over there, and then we started that part of the development. We serve the community. We're here, we think Ward 7 first, Ward 7 people, Ward 7 jobs, Ward 7 economic development. We don't come here from California, we don't come here from Northwest DC, we come right here from Benning Road, 3939 Benning Road. That's where our headquarters is. So if you're not doing anything, if you want to tour the facility, if you want to see what's going on, that's your Community Development Corporation. Next. What's in a zip code? I like to pin this. What is in a zip code? What's in a zip code? A child's future. Your future. They say, why is the zip code so important? Does anybody know? It's kind of a question. Why is the zip code just so important?
I'm thinking.
Yeah, get the mic. If I gotta talk in the mic, you do too.
I was going towards education because where you live, you're basically zoned for a particular school.
Yes.
School, yeah.
Right. Absolutely. So one of the answers was education. Education. So if you're in a school or school district, they make decisions or based upon the zip code. As far as also the educational opportunities, what's the score, the SAT score, all those things that are wrapped around education in your local school, that's your zip code. And when you want to go outside of your zip code, that's a process. It's not like, hey, today I think I want to go to Banneker, or today I want to go to Wilson. What is your zip code, what's your area school, and that's where you go. So education is a game changer. So what's in the zip code? Education. Anything else? Yes.
Development.
Absolutely. Someone said development. Why is development important? 20019, 20020, right? So when developers decide to say, I'm going to build over here, what they do is they look at the AMI, area median income, right? If I bring A over here, do I have a market that's going to support it, right? When developers go get their financing packages, they have to have a certain number of leases and certain types of leases, right? To get the interest rate that they're looking for or the goal to develop that project. Otherwise, they ask for subsidies, right? City has to subsidize because the AMI for that zip code is universal. You don't have to be in Washington, D.C. to pull it up. You can be in France, you can be in Qatar, you can be in buy, those are the investors that are saying, hey, if I put money here, will I get a return on my investment? So education, economics, right? Crime, your house, right? You wonder why your house is valued. They run comparables, right? They say, if I run a comparable with, 20020, what is that going to tell me? It's going to tell you a lot. Who lives there, the demographics, and they make decisions on investing in that area. So what's in the zip code not only is a child's future, but your future. Next. What's going on Ward 7? A lot. I paint the bad picture, but there's a good picture, so I'll show you the bad picture. There's crime, there's concern, there's opportunity. So what I say is that civic associations, ANC members, they need to be involved to decide on what will go and what will happen in your community. And you're the stakeholders, you're the game changers. Next. So, a lot of people say, oh, not in my neighborhood. Yeah. So, it's this concentration. So the district continues to push out. And people have to go somewhere. And people go based upon zip code, right? Affordability factor, based upon the zip code. So what we see is U Street doesn't look like U Street. Does anybody think U Street looked like U Street 10 years ago? No. All right, I was down the wharf. I went down to the wharf 3 times. 3 times. I went for the opening. I went just because, I didn't get to see everything, so it was so crowded. And then I took my son who came in town. The reason why I went down the wharf, so I wanted to know what was the art of the possible. But if anybody remember the wharf, it was Holgate's, H2O, Phillips. Where did all that go? Where did those people go? So somewhere, as the district pushes out, people have to come somewhere. And what happens is they go where they can afford. So we need to kind of, I call it balance, right, the distribution. There's a little east of the river, but there's a little up in northwest, there's a little in southwest, there's a little everywhere. And I call that the distribution factor, so everybody gets the lift. Next. So, again, I'm a big statistic guy. I listen to conversations a lot, but numbers drive me. So I said, okay, show me the change over time of how my neighborhood is changing. Because remember, I live here and I had to convince my wife. So we're not going to let too much happen where, I have to renege on my promise. So we're going to be all in and all invested. So we need to make sure that there's a mixture across the city. Next. So that leads me to Marshall Heights and the community development. So Marshall Heights is the game changer. They're a community development corporation. It was a concept started a long time ago in Brooklyn, and Jack Kemp was the director or the secretary of HUD, and he said, I got an idea. If we empower communities and provide financial incentives for them to do development, who's in the best position to decide on what that looks like? The community. So they developed this thing called community development corporations. And they incentivize these CDCs to do development. Now, the District of Columbia has a different spin on community development corporations. And why? Because big developers don't like community development organizations or corporations. Why? And because it empowers the residents in the community to be at the table to make the decision. So if anyone knows how a big corporation operates, they go to a board meeting, they make decisions, and they're measured on metrics, performance, and timelines, right? Anything that impacts their metric, their performance, or their timeline is not a good thing. So you don't want somebody to go, excuse me, I got a question. Why is there not more transportation there? Oh, not a good answer because you may slow down the project. So, what I would say is I would submit to you is that if you want to be engaged and you want to be a game changer in your community, get involved with your CDC and lobby to make change through your CDC. If you see a project, ask the developer, well, did you talk to the neighborhood CDC and what did they have to say? What was their opinion? Did they opine that this was a good idea, or did they opine differently? So, CDC's work to enhance conditions oftentimes involves neighborhood organizing, a process critical for empowering residents and gaining political power. That's what I think I said. I'll just say it again. It's black and white. So when the developer comes for Penn Brent Shopping Center, you can ask them, have you met with your CDC? Next. So our history, founded in 1979, development projects Marshall Heights, Mayfair, Skylands, Parkside, Denny's, facade improvements, Meadow Green. So the list goes on and on and on. So we also encourage home ownership. So one of the things that we see in, I call it high-performing communities, we see more of a mix of owner versus rental. Right? So one of the statistics I saw in the District of Columbia one time that is home ownership is probably at the 40th percentile. So when you look at a community, 40% of that community, it may be less than that, are homeowners. 60% are investors. Investors' concern is, what is my return on my investment? Your concern, or neighborhood's concern, is, what is the return on my community? So you ask them, what's the ROC, return on my community, right? So what do? We do supportive housing, home buyers club, workforce development. We used to do GED preparation, kind of got out of that business, housing counseling, foreclosure mitigation, emergency assistance, and others. Next. Who are we? Our mission is to help grow Ward 7 into District of Columbia's most welcome and prosperous and living community for everyone. Soups to nuts. Big mission statement, hard to achieve. What are our values? Support Ward 7 first. So we're going to come out with these new cool pins, right, that say Marshall Heights, and I meant to pass them out, but, we didn't get them in time. But it says Ward 7 first. So again, here's why I challenge you. I don't care who they are. I don't care what politician they are, if they're federal, local. I don't care if they're developers. Ask one question. What does that mean, Ward 7 first? Are you hiring the people in Ward 7? Show us on your payroll where Ward 7's first. Show us in your small business contracting capability that you're using Ward 7 first. Show us how you're making Ward 7 first, because if they spend dollars and you employ Ward 7 residents, then Ward 7 spends back into Ward 7 that takes into account that zip code that increases our AMI, that makes us more attractive, that makes our schools better. So demand Ward 7 first. So yeah, I heard you. So first thing, where's your address? Where's your company? Who's funding you? Is anything tied to Ward 7? And if it's not, tell them, go see your CDC and come back with a plan that looks like Ward 7 first. Next. This is our staff. We have a board of directors of about 15 very capable and very engaged community people. Our charter states that our directors come from our geographical area. Our geographical area is Ward 7. That's where our directors come. So they're community people that sit on our board. We have the president and CEO. We just had a job announcement, so we're doing a search for that. We have a CFO. We have accountant, operations, and HR, asset, property management, and housing counseling. We want to keep people in their house. Next. Next. So this is our headquarters building. If anybody hasn't, driven by there, I would encourage you to go in. All you have to do is say, hey, this guy came out on Tuesday that talked about this organization, and he said that you would give me a free tour and a cold bottle of water, something. And a pen, don't forget the pen. And just come by, because that's a community building, just like a library. It belongs to the community. When I leave, I'll turn the keys over to someone else. Matter of fact, I had a board orientation meeting the other day, and I pulled out the keys and I said, who's next? Because I got about 3 to 5 years, and I'm old and I'm gone. I don't want to be the community development guy at 60. You know, my wife and I promised, I said, once we move here, we'll be here, and then we'll be gone. So we're going to be here, but I have some other things that I'd like to do in life. So I want to I want to create a succession plan for young people. What's your name again? Make sure we send you the invitation. I'm looking for my successor. I don't, people get the jobs and want to stay there. I got 50 years on the job. I say congratulations. I don't want 50. I want to do enough time to groom my successor, and it's time for the millennials to take the helm. So that's our headquarters facility, 3939 Benny Road. It's the community building. It belongs to Ward 7. You own it. It's part, as much as mine as it is yours. Next. Somebody gave it to me. Wait, so back up. Go back one slide. So the Lloyd D. Smith Center, so it was a guy named Lloyd that was one of our first CEOs. So he gave it to somebody, the chairman gave his position to somebody, and my name's not gonna go up there, but then I have to turn it over to somebody else because my name's not on the building. All right, so somebody else does the job. Next. Single resident housing. So, again, we were here when it wasn't sexy. So we also house, we call it our superstars that are in transition. They're going from A to B. So we operate a single residence housing complex on Nettie Hill Boroughs that we take in people that are on their way somewhere else, and we help them with that transition. Next. The Wilson Building. You'll see the Wilson Building, that's on Minnesota Avenue. I apologize if the street is torn up. That wasn't my fault. You have to blame, somebody down at the Wilson Building, the true Wilson Building. That they need to finish this. Does anybody irritate that street been developed that long and just, okay, yeah, I thought it was just me, but I've been a lot of places. I was in the military. I've never seen construction that long on the same street. Geez. That street started construction before the wharf. The wharf is finished and had a grand opening. We still doing construction on the street. I'm like, something missing. I don't know what they're putting in, but it must be top secret, super sensitive, that's going to change the whole way, Minnesota, how Minnesota looks. And we're going to be able to go down there without even burning gas because it's going to be no, it's not going to happen. Is it the metro going on for me? Not going to happen? Oh, yeah. All right, next one. So these are some of the projects that we were involved in. Meadow Greens, anybody know what Meadow Greens is? East Capitol and Minnesota Avenue. So that's getting ready to get redeveloped. That's E&G. They closed on it. Matter of fact, I got a note today. We're partnership in that, and they closed on that today. And so they're starting, I think, the retirement place across the street. I don't know if we're going to be partnering that now, but we'll see if we can stay engaged. Fort Chaplain. One of the, Denny's, Raphael's the owner. He liked it so much, he opened the Denny's, on the other side near the cemetery. So if you go in and say, hey, did Marshall Heights, help you develop, I need a 20% discount, you may get a discount, maybe not. The project that I'm most proud of is Banneker Ridge. Does anybody know what Banneker Ridge is? Yep. Banneker Ridge? Where's Banneker Ridge? Minnesota and East Capitol, right? Yeah. Single family homes, right? I love single family homes. I have one. I liked it so much I took an apartment and made it a single family home. That's how much I like it. So those are game changers. And the reason why they're game changers is that we completed that project probably about 2006-ish. Single family houses. Again, we were here when it wasn't sexy. Somebody said, you're going to build a single family house in the District of Columbia in Ward 7 back then. And we're going to sell it for about, under $300,000. They're like, nobody's going to buy the house, first of all. Everybody's doing high density. You got to put 100 people in a cardboard box and call it affordable housing. Right? Squeeze them in, give them money. So we said, no, we're going to build a neighborhood of single-family houses, and we're going to sell them to people who want to have home ownership. And we did that. So to the residents, what do you think that did to the residents in Banneker Ridge as far as network and changing the game from a legacy perspective? So, those houses are probably worth about $500,000. Got garages, basements. So they came in, they created some networks for their family, something they could leave as a legacy to their kids. They stopped paying rent, and now they're on the road to a different trajectory, right? So what I'm gonna do for Christmas, I'm gonna knock on all their doors, and I'm gonna tell them, are you gonna invite me over for Christmas dinner? Because somebody owes me something, right? See how many takers I get. But Banneker Ridge is the model if we want to be the game changers for Ward 7. We need to create more, I call it, single-family workforce housing, right? Affordable, single-family, home ownership, that changes the game. Next. This is what Skyline was supposed to be, the one on the right. It is a nice, how many people have been to Skyline? So we're partnering Skyline, we just had to back out for a minute, but we're gonna go back in because some, I call it some nuances about CDC's own stuff and whatever. So, has anybody been to Skyline? Does it look like that? No, get out of here. Yes, it does. So, that project started before the war started. That's like Minnesota Avenue. These are the projects that keep giving. We have to figure out a way, because it's like I could stand on Skyline on Alabama Avenue in Good Hope, and I can see the Capitol. And that's even when I've been down, I can still see it because there's nothing there. There's nothing in my way, in my view. It's a straight view. So I think there's some things that we could probably do smarter. One is to figure out some transportation capabilities to attract better, I call it, retailers or whoever's going to move into the site to make it more traffic. Because what did I start off with? I said, what is in a what? A zip code. That's in a zip code. Right. Mayfair Mansion was a development we were involved in with CPBC, and boy was that challenging. And I have a story for that, but I'm not going to bog down the meeting on what happened there. But it was a Marshall Heights bright idea to have home ownership that went south, because home ownership, selling homes for under the value in 2008 just didn't happen. The market crashed, and selling homes, condominiums, it wasn't homes, for a certain price of what you could build just did not happen. So we had to retreat a little bit, but we retreated to safety. So there's two parts of Mayfair Mansion. There's the apartment side and what was supposed to be the condo home ownership to give it kind of that stability. And I wish it would have went better than it did. Next. Safeway. Remember I told you Safeway? I said, who brought Safeway here? And I think I was the only one who knew that question, but I can prove it. New Safeway in Northeast brings hope to area. And if you read the fine print, it'll say MACDO. That will be us. We're the CDC. That's what we do. And so we have a civic responsibility. I went into Safeway, and I was, again, I told you how I got here. I kind of jumped into stuff by accident by people offering me cookies. So I like cookies, I'm sorry. So I went in to get some cookies. My nemesis, right? Cookies. If anybody, there ain't cookies back there, chocolate cookies?
Yes.
All right, just put a couple aside for me. That's how I got here too. I'll probably be running for something in here if they give me some cookies. I'll be one of your, secretary or something. Just give me a couple cookies, I'll sign up for something. But anyway, fast forward. So, well, go back one. So there was not a really good retailer. So Marshall Heights reached out to a few people, Safeway. That was back in, I call it the Lloyd Smith era. And we said we needed a better grocer here. And we were able to bring Safeway. So I said, hey, if they did it then, I guess it's my job to try to steer the organization to do something with Safeway because I went to get cookies and the line was around the block. And I said, man, it's a horrible time for cookies, I guess. So I got a little disappointed. I talked to the manager. The manager said, hey, there's nothing we can do. So I wrote a letter. Marshall Heights wrote a letter to the Safeway executives. They came down. We had a talk. And I said, you know, this is ridiculous. You know, our building sits right behind Safeway. We brought you here. This is back in January, February time frame. And I said, what can we do better? You know, you guys need to step up the game. So I became part of the task force. I started to put, Marshall Heights started to put a little bit of pressure on Safeway, saying they have to do better because I was under some false information. I hate it when I don't have all the facts, because I'm a fact guy. You gotta tell me the facts, show me the empirical data, and I can make a good decision. So when I found out that somebody told me, gave me some misinformation that Safeway this was the highest grossing Safeway in the District of Columbia and Eastern Seaboard. So I told the guy, I said, hey, this is the highest. He said, no, we're losing money. I said, oh. So Safeway is owned by Albertsons, they're accountable to the shareholders. So I said, okay. Well, let me retreat a little bit back into a new position. So why are you losing money? They said, well, what's in the zip code? How people shop. You know, sometimes they buy a cart full of ramen noodles and some sodas and some chips with very low profit margins. Maybe they're not buying the organic foods, right, that have the higher profit margin. Maybe they're not buying the fresh vegetables and the vegetables go bad because they're not selling at the rate that they need to make a profit. Maybe when the consumer goes to the Safeway, he goes with no money, but he's walking out with a lot of groceries. And sometimes groceries are going out the back door. So I said, wow, maybe, and this is what they told me, right? Maybe that the workforce there is turning over at 150%. So if you have a business and the workforce is there and they're gone 2 weeks, you got to train somebody else and they're gone, they come and go, then maybe we need to figure out a way to make Safeway profitable. Maybe we need to rethink our paradigm because the Safeway up in Steep Pleasant closed because of that same reason. And do we want to put so much pressure on Safeway that they start to look for other opportunities where they can make money? So I said to myself, well, from a Marshall Heights perspective, we brought them here. How do we engage them smartly where they are making a profit, and what can we do to encourage, I call it, a different model. So we're thinking about that and we're working on it. And I think we're going to need the community to get engaged and help Safeway be successful. Because if they're successful, we're successful, right? Just the way it is. And if they close that Safeway, here's the issue. Here's the issue. Like most of us, raise your hand if you have a vehicle. You know, raise your hand if you have 2 vehicles. All right. So, if Safeway closes for most of the people in this room, we get in the car and go to FT. All right, we go to Wegmans, we go to Trader Joe's, we go to Whole Foods. But for some people in this community, if Safeway closes, that transportation issue becomes a big issue. So we have to be careful to make sure that Safeway is successful for the people who are not maybe as privileged to just get in their car and go somewhere else to shop. So that made Marshall Heights rethink their position and say, I think we need to be more community-minded. How can we engage Safeway to make them successful instead of bring out the sledgehammer and beat them over the head until the point where somebody on the C-level, right, and that corporation says, it's a bridge too far for me, close it. Now what do we do? So that's just my kind of 2 cents. So community engagement is really important. We have to figure out how to make people who come in our community successful, but still meet a certain criteria. Next. So Marshall Heights, again, you keep hearing me saying Marshall Heights, we've been there. We've been to the top of the food chain, and Lord knows we've been to the bottom. So the top of the food chain is, that's That's our past chairman on the right side, and the President of the United States, Bill Clinton. And I think they were over at Langston Golf Course hitting a few balls. We hosted the President. And then, does anyone know that lady in the far back in the yellow? Trivia question. Queen Elizabeth, right? So, that, Queen Elizabeth called Queen Stroll, that we developed a little street that was a dirt street. Queen came out, went to see what Marshall Heights was doing, and with Barbara Bush, and met one of our original board members next. So I always say, okay, my stump speech is, what can we do? This is what you're doing now. I applaud you. You're spending time in your community, you're taking time away from your family or your favorite television show or eating dinner or watching a movie to come out here and be civic-minded, community activists. So, from a Marshall Heights perspective, we're going to do a lot more of, I call it community engagement, right? Coming out, talking about the corporation, what we do, what we have to offer. And what I would like to do is, our committees are not just restricted to the 15 board members that are Marshall Heights. This is your organization just as well as it is my organization, but it's a corporation. So there's a difference. A corporation, 10 minutes? All right. A corporation must make money, right? We got to make money and we have to do good. We don't get there and start having shouting matches about, we don't go to anger management meetings. If you come in and shout at Marshall Heights and want to fuss and everything, I would say, time out. You need to go back to Penn Brent Civic Association and shout up a storm until you get out of your system, then come back. Or you need to go back to your ANCs and demand and jump. We try to do things in a different view. We're a corporation, we behave like a corporation, we are a corporation, and we expect the people who engage us to be corporate minded. So these are all the committees, we can send that out. If you want to be part of a committee, I love community activists that are channeled in the right direction to make a change. And we welcome you. Next. Now, major developments. I'm working on this. So we're creating this database. And this, I think, it's one more slide after this because I only got 10 minutes. And Jimmy is a real stickler on time. He wants to start on time and end on time. So I want to be respectful of that. So these are all the projects. So I'm going through naming all the projects, what ANC is saying. So we're keeping a database. And we're going to engage and we're going to be involved in these projects. Eastern River Park, I talked about that. The owner seated trust, they'll REIT out of New York. They're not from here, but and that's where the new Uber Green is going. And they want to develop that shopping center. We're going to be a part of that. I'm going to make sure we're a part of that because we're going to speak on behalf of what we think is important. Parkside, everybody knows where Parkside, 295, right? 295. If you go down 295 toward Maryland, you look over to the left, that's Parkside. It's right behind the Pepco Benny Road Power Station. The building's going up. That's Parkside, that's city interest. Penn Branch, or shops at Penn Branch, I guess you know where that is, right? That's right here. We're going to engage Jair, and we're going to be a part of this. I think we're going to be a part of this. He may not think we're going to be a part of this, but I think we're going to be a part of this. We're going to talk about what smart things look like. One of the things that I believe that makes it smart, because I live here, right? I live right down the street, is figuring out the transportation issue. Right? So, we talked about the circular coming through. We talked about metro stops. Those are long capital projects that you got to get in the budget, figure out how to fund it, right? Because transportation makes the difference. And everybody can't have a car on the road trying to get on Branch Avenue. But I'm a big proponent of development. It needs to be developed. We need to have smart development because we have to hand over the keys to someone else that's going to live here that's much younger than me. All right, Skyline, I talked about the views are beautiful and I can see them from 2 feet from the ground, and I don't want to see them from 2 feet from the ground. I want to see them on top of a building looking over, but right now it's just a lot of dirt. Capitol View, A&R was a developer out of Baltimore. Right next to a metro station. Again, this is kind of an aha moment. A metro station is right across the street from Capitol View on East Capitol and Southern Avenue. Now, put that metro station in that big plot of land in Virginia, in Arlington. What's in the zip code? Everything. Strand Theater, developer for that. I'm waiting on him to knock on Marshall Heights' door and tell us what we're gonna do and how we're gonna partner. Lincoln Heights, Lincoln Dwellings, been a project for a long period of time. Again, we need to talk about how we're gonna partner and get that developed. So we're in Northeast. Meadow Greens, we talked about E&G as the developer. We're gonna engage them. Greenway, does anybody know what Greenway is? Something's wrong when I know where all the projects is, right? I do have a full-time job, have a little lane, when I go to work. But I don't sleep anymore because, my wife says, anything changed? I said, got it, I better work harder now. So Greenway. Greenway has a fence around it now. Greenway is a horrible shopping center. I never liked Greenway. So Greenway is on East Capitol, Minnesota, next to Meadow Greens, across catty corner to where we built the single-family homes called Banneker Ridge. They got the fence around it, they're going to knock it down, raise it. It sits in the eyesight of RFK. So they're going to do something about that. We think we have some ideas. They don't think we have ideas, but we need to have a dialogue about our ideas before they erect something that we're not interested in. We did Marshall Heights in the community. RFK, who knows that DC United played their last game? Right. Has anybody seen the new soccer stadium?
Yeah.
So I drive around the district and look. So it is a fabulous. Jimmy, where am I on time? 5 minutes? 6. So I saw steel coming out of the ground. Acreage, the land transfer happened, and now it's a nice stadium right next to the baseball stadium. I'm pretty sure a subsidy was involved. I'm pretty sure some tax credits was involved. And we got a proposal ground, right? Skyland and other one. And none of the developers live in Ward 7, but we're the CDC in Ward 7, so we got to figure it out. And that's reservation 13 for some of the people that are not maybe as informed. They're going to continue to develop that and how that looks. That whole piece of land, the 2 buildings are going up. They want to do Donatelli and Blue Sky are the developers, not Ward 7, Donatelli's Bethesda. So say they're community-based and Blue Sky is, but not Donatelli. 2 units going up, 60 more acres to be developed. But guess what ward that's in? Does anybody know?
7.
What? I ain't hear you. 7. It's in Ward 7. But guess, DC Events is the kind of the main stakeholder, but have you heard about the meetings? The DC Events come and brief Penn Branch? No? All right, Jimmy, you need to get that in the parking lot. DC Events needs to come and brief Penn Branch on the Ward 7 project, Reservation 13, what's going on, right? The chairman of DC Events, it's just not just convention centers. I don't think you pay your fair share of taxes too, right? Just start a check. Tell them come out here, tell them what's the plan, because that's just not a Ward 6 development. Although Ward 6, Hill East wants to control it, it's Ward 7. So, I think Stevens was right across the street from us. Some building right across from Denny's, right? Big building on Benny Road, kind of locked everything down. It's big. You're going to have to watch that project. You're going to have to watch what goes in there. Yes?
So, is that so others may eat?
Yes. So that's a lot of some and others eating in one space, right? So you want a distribution because what's in a zip code is a lot. And you get a concentration of too many people that want to eat. They may come over your house and eat, which is a good thing, as long as you invite them. So make sure that you have equitable distribution of everything. Everything, right? Next. Kenilworth. Kenilworth is being redeveloped. Kenilworth is called Lily Ponds, Eastland Gardens, right? They're going to raise that, redevelop that. Yeah, that's part of Ward 7. You may say, well, I live over here. Old Pine Chair, right? Ward 7. What affects that side? Affects this side. We just talked about that. I showed you kind of a demographic early on. I said, here's a push east of the river. So everybody here is connected. And guess what's going to happen? Kind of amazing things going to happen. The census is going to come out. And guess where the new boundaries of Ward 7 is going to be? Can anybody tell me? The new boundaries of Ward 7, when the census come out, you got all that development, all those people in Ward 6, and they're going to bust the 70,000, maybe go to 90,000 or 80,000, how they're going to have to redistrict. And guess where the new district's gonna be drawn? I don't know either. I came here tonight asking, one of you can tell me. You don't know how your ward's gonna look. So my point is what you think doesn't affect you may affect you. All right. Fletcher Johnson, and I got maybe 2 more minutes and I'm off the stage. So Fletcher Johnson was a school. It was given to the Department of Education, the Deputy Mayor for Education. They're thinking about it's about 9 acres. They're pondering what are we going to do with Fletcher Johnson off Benning Road. So the CDC really needs to be involved. Now, if you know the history of Fletcher Johnson, does anybody know the Fletcher? I guess I know too much. That's when you know it's time to leave and find a new successor. When you start knowing more than everybody else, you're like, time for me to go. So, I say that to say this. So, the history behind Fletcher Johnson and that whole development site, has anybody ever heard of Penn Cemetery? Penn Cemetery was a cemetery for slaves, right? Slaves couldn't afford to bury themselves, so Penn developed a cemetery, and that's where, right across from Woodland, right? Woodland Cemetery was on one side. So they already developed that. I hope that is smart development as they start developing, because they may find some things that they weren't looking for. So Marshall Heights plans to be a part of that project. Right now, KIP wants to move, and people are kind of positioning themselves. But here's the question. Are they based in Ward 7? Are they going to make Ward 7 first? Are they going to hire Ward 7? Are they going to bring the contractors and subcontractors from Ward 7? Are they going to have training programs to get Ward 7 residents ready? If they're not doing it in your ward, what makes you think that they're going to spend in your ward and stay in your ward? That's kind of a temporary, that's kind of like speed dating. You come in, you talk for a minute, you go to the next one. So what's happening is a lot of speed dating. And when Jimmy starts walking behind me, that means my date is over and my time has expired. So I will get off the stage. If you have questions, though, just write them down or put them on paper. What we'll do is pass out our cards, because here's how I like to respond. I'm just one person, but we got a nice staff. So their job is to engage the community. So if you have questions, please, Ms. Mercer's going to pass out her cards, or she's going to put them on the back. We're going to close it up. We're going to turn it back over to the leadership team here at Penn Branch. And if you want to engage us or come out and have a conversation, we're more than welcome. This is your Community Development Corporation. This is Ward 7's Community Development Corporation. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, David. Thank you, appreciate it. Again, if you have any questions, David is available. He'll be in the back of the room, so I encourage you, if you have any questions, feel free to answer. We're going to give them a few minutes to break down their equipment, and then we'll start with our next speaker. So again, as a matter of fact, while I procrastinate a little bit, if you have any general questions, one note of housekeeping that I'm going to ask is, a lot of you all did ask about what happened with the Penn Branch Shopping Center meeting. That was postponed at the request of the developer. The developer wanted more time to meet with the community, more time to work out with some issues. This particular one was a meeting anyway. It was to allow the developer to respond to the questions posed by people on O Street, including one that said that they had a right to light and air. So specifically, they were asked to comment on the right to light and air, which we found out the Supreme Court has since invalidated and said there's not a right to light and air. You have a right to purchase your house. That was the response back. And the second was, they were told that they needed to meet with the community, and if there were specific issues on O Street, they needed to meet and address those issues. My understanding, they're in the process of addressing those issues. The zone change, without getting technical, was going from MU3 to MU4, that they're now going to work on a different type of customized zone change that was already discussed. The other ask that we're asking of them, because I can tell you, part of the problem is we do think they can do a better job of at least giving us play-by-play. The last hearing that took place, a lot of people didn't find out until the night before. There was a strong effort by some people in the community, but a lot of people have contacted me about Penn Hill and said they had no idea that there was a hearing. I know several of us in the room, some of us did hear the hearing. I know I sent out notices. We don't know when there's going to be another meeting or another hearing. We'll keep you posted. In the meantime, I am strongly asking the developer, to come up with a mode of communication, not a Penn branch meeting, because I don't think coming to a meeting, speaking for any part of our meeting constitutes a meeting. And secondly, during the meeting, I was pretty blunt with them. I said, you know, I saw 3 people sitting with you that we've never seen. We would love to have a meeting that when those lawyers and those other people that showed up at the zoning hearing, that we can ask questions. And it didn't look good for them when they were asked specific questions and that they couldn't answer those questions. So even from our side, I think we've got to be responsive to all of our community. And we're hoping the developer will, you know, take the opportunity to do something really specific, not in a Penn branch meeting, not in a meeting, but to answer those questions that brings, let's just get it out in the open. Let's find out what you're doing. Let's find out what you're planning, whether you support it, whether you want high density, low density. Let's give us all the chance to answer that question, and let's get some of the experts from Gyre Lynch with them. So that's a request that we're going to make. But again, I kind of draw the line saying, I don't want it to be a Penn branch meeting about that. I would like it to be a separate community meeting. And since it is taking place in the area of Penn branch, I think we all should be active. But the issue has really been on Old Street, those residents that are living behind a wall. They're surrounded by the Old Street wall on one side, and then they have the development Penn Hill on the other side. So there is a unique situation. And I think they're raising some valid points. They want to know how they're going to be impacted, and I think they should. Matter of fact, I think anyone that's surrounding a shopping center, the development, you want to know, you know, will that development cost mice? They've answered some of those questions, but I think we just... Okay, I'm being polite. Let's say, will it cost rats? But then there are other things we want to know about the timing, the specifics. We want to know those details, and we need to have a detailed venue where I know I have a lot of questions, but we want to know, we have the experts there. And I think it just needs to be answered to the satisfaction of people in this community. And there needs to be frequent meetings about rollout, and if there's changes, we want to know what those changes are. So I think a better job of managing the responses is something that I think we all want and we all deserve, and so that's my request. So without that being said, I don't know, the other thing is, we do a lot here. It's our membership drive, so I mean, we want to make sure that if you're not a member of Penn Branch and you haven't paid it, use this opportunity to pay your membership. With that being said, we have an esteemed guest speaker here, Council Member Anita Bond, who's a councilwoman at large. Councilwoman Anita Bonds has been very active in the city. Most of you already know who she is. She does double work, probably one of the hardest working people I've seen, because I've seen her early morning at hearings and then late at night at a Democrat state committee meeting, and those things are sometimes very much fun, as you know, but late at night. So she's very hardworking, and like I said, I really appreciate the opportunity for her to come out to speak with us. So I'm going to skip the bio that we all know, and I want you all to give a welcome to Councilwoman Anita Bonds. So we can probably hit the lights on.
Well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you. And I have my communications director passing out some information for you. The information, of course, is what most members of the council like to carry around with them, and that's most recent activity report. So it's glossy, it has pictures in it, but don't be afraid to look at it because it also has information. Okay. Now, along with that, you're going to get a sheet. On the front it says, this is from the DMPED dashboard about Ward 7. These are projects that they have completed or are under construction. But on the flip side, the shorter list is not on the dashboard. It's a compilation that we did in our office, which gives you vacant properties that are currently available to developers to develop, and they're all in your ward. So I thought you might want to have both lists to sort of look at. Okay. I chair the Committee on Housing and Neighborhood Revitalization, so I was very interested in the presentation from the Marshall Heights Association. I thought it was good. and it tells you a lot about what the potential is in the ward. So I applaud you, and I know that Marshall Heights wants to be involved in all of the projects, and we'll be working towards that because they said so. They said we're into everything, and I wish them well, because usually these projects are based on funding source and how the funding source is going to be handled. And let me just start by telling you a little bit about where we are today in the government. As you know, government is doing well. We are a $14 billion corporation, and much driven by the resources that you share through your taxes, through your speed camera fines and things like that you don't want to talk about, and it's okay. But I'm telling you, it does make a big difference. Oh, and of course, the bars that you stop in on your way to your little hacienda, okay? When you stop downtown, we get taxes from every drink that you partake. And we thank you. And when I say we all, you too, thank yourself for doing that, because it really makes the budget that we have for the District of Columbia, the budget that attempts to assist people of need and at the same time make sure that our neighborhoods are growing and are thriving. So you can give yourself a round of applause for making this the neighborhood that it is. Sincerely, our budget is greater than that of 10 states. 10 states. That's really very significant. Especially with us wanting to be a state, and so we would be at the bottom of the barrel. We would be up there, so that's kind of important. But this evening, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about housing. I really want to get some feedback from you. We are approaching the new budget cycle, so it's important to me to know where you are as it relates to housing. I tell you why. Some say that we need more affordable housing. We know that the cost of housing today is very, very high. And it makes it very difficult if you're not a homeowner to really live in the District of Columbia and have a good life. I know that some of our younger residents spend as much as, yes, you're one, spend as much as 75% of their income on housing. And, excuse me, nationally, they say we should be spending about 30%. So when you're spending about 75% on housing, that's quite a bit. We also have many of our young folk, they cannot afford a place by themselves, so they have roommates. Roommates that they really don't know, and they have to very quickly get to know them, so that they can have a quality of life. So if you're a homeowner, you're in better shape. But as a homeowner, you know you want your assessed value to continue to climb so that your property is worth more and more and more, and that means that you're going to pay more and more. Now, one of the things that I did when I first came on the council almost 5 years ago was to advocate for seniors and persons with disabilities that had lived in the city for over 25 years and owned property, that they would cease paying property tax. And we got the bill through, particularly if the individual had income of under 60,000 household income. And it became law. And 2 days later, the council, in its wisdom, decided, oh no, we're not going to implement this new law. We actually are saying now that everyone should pay some property taxes. So I learned a little bit. I'd only been on the council a few months. So I learned from that. You know, having 7 votes isn't always the solution. You gotta hold on to your votes and get more. So that's where I am today. And so I don't have the language presented to the council yet, but I do plan on presenting language that will be a solution, particularly for 30% of our seniors. 30% of persons who are 62 and older in the city have income under $15,000. I don't know how they're making it, but for those who have incomes at that level or up to $25,000, we're going to try to reduce their taxes a little more, maybe down to 10%, 25%. Currently, if you're a senior and your income is up to $128,000 in a household, you pay 50% of whatever your tax is. So we're going to try to reduce that down a little more, because as property begins to rise, it is a hardship in many households. So we're working on that. In the Housing Committee, Housing and Community Revitalization, we're also concerned with what happens with persons who are in condominiums and co-ops. You have a few here in Ward 7. And what usually happens is people have purchased them maybe 10, 15 years ago, did not know that the roof had been around for 50 years, and therefore now they have a big problem. So with leaks and need of repair. And many of the people who have done these purchases are seniors again. So we're working on trying to rectify that and have some funds available for what we call the common interest of the common areas of these facilities. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing. You know a little bit about the booklet that you have. The handout will tell you about the bills over the last couple of years that we've been successful with. So I hope you'll take a look at that. It is propaganda because it is from the council, but it's information for you. So I just want you to know that. So don't be afraid, as I said, to look at it. It really does have information in there, and I hope some of it you can use. Tonight, I was instructed that I needed to talk a little bit about not just housing, but really development in the ward. And so that's why I gave you the sheet. But when you talk about development in Ward 7, this is my home ward, by the way. I grew up here. I'm what you call a Southeast girl, so I grew up over here. And now I live down in the Bloomingdale area, but my mom is still in this neighborhood. So I know a little bit about the projects that I heard about on the screen. But really and truly, I think one of the things that has happened over the last 10 years is that Ward 7 has been somewhat not included in many of the development projects. Now that's good and that's bad, because it's good from the standpoint that you still have rolling hills and single detached homes, but it also means that you're the last horizon. And you know what happens. You know what happens when you're the last horizon. More and more people will be coming to the community, and more developers will be thinking about that little square inch and how they can densify it, as I call it. And so I'm just saying to you, be concerned and pay attention to all of the development projects that are presented to you, because they do have meaning in the grand theme of things. Particularly if you're trying to raise your children, you want to be able to have a very nice neighborhood, and one that can accommodate them, and one where they can play. And then of course you want to have quality schools. Now that's an area that we as a city, we say we're doing better, and we are, but we're not doing better fast enough for many households. And so we need to work on that. And I say, if you're not involved in your neighborhood school, you need to be involved in your neighborhood school. Am I not right, Ms. Williams? Yeah. All right, okay. She wants all of you out and engaged, because that's the only way you're going to make a difference for your community. So I think that was the two items that I was to cover.
Thank you.
All right, well, we could talk, but I want to hear from you. I think that that's much more rewarding. I want to know what's on your mind, what it is that you would like to see the council doing, and what you'd like to know about how we are thinking we're going to spend your money, or how you would like us to spend your money. Because most likely we will have at least $14 billion budget in 2019, maybe a little more. So we certainly want to hear from you and how you think that should be spent. So I will, can I?
Yeah, go ahead, and I'll just moderate.
Okay. Any thoughts about how we should spend the money? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'd like to see a progress on reworking the traffic patterns at the Minnesota Avenue and LaFont Square area, Minnesota and Penn, where you had the Yes Market that failed, and you had the, you know, that Kitty College, which has been out there for months and months, and we know it's probably not coming. So you've got this vacant retail space. But that whole intersection has got to be reworked, redesigned, because it's impossible to navigate by foot, bike, or cars.
All right, well, that's a tall order as it relates to DDOT. They have about 6 such intersections across the city where they're just problematic. They're not pedestrian friendly at all. And the traffic coming in from the suburbs, as I call it, it has to flow. And we're going to have more of a problem if we do not find a solution to our metro issue, as you well know. The solution is that we need to have the dedicated tax, one that would be only 1%, but all of the jurisdictions affected have to participate in it. And the federal government needs to participate. 40% of the ridership on Metro are persons coming into the city to federal jobs. But the feds do not want to contribute to any greater degree. So that's a big issue for us. So our roadways are going to become even more important than they are today. And I have to ask, do you have bikes, lots of bikes here? How does that flow in the morning when bikes and cars are trying to make it together?
It doesn't. It doesn't. It's too many.
Well, I can tell you one of our biggest complaints, you know, we have bicycle racks,
Yes.
but there's nowhere to ride them, no bicycle lanes in and out of the neighborhood. And if you can find one, it starts on one block and then jumps over 10 blocks later, as if I can fly my bike over there. But yeah, it's not a consistent plan.
Well, I think that's the case in many parts of the city. I live in a neighborhood that has lanes, but the bikers don't use the lanes. You know, every time I discover a little roadway I can go on to get to my job, here the bikers come. And I can talk like this because my son rides 90 miles every weekend, okay? So I told him, I said, as your mom, I can speak about it, but it's very challenging, particularly for the cars and the bikers on the same roadway. Very, very challenging. This morning I saw a woman who, on her bike, and she was in the lane, and this truck decided he's not going to wait at the light because the light is green, but you know, we can't get across the intersection because there's a backup. So he comes around, he almost hit her. You know, he just decided he was not going to wait. And I mean, those kinds of situations happen. And I tell people, those on bikes are flesh and blood. They don't have that protective metal and fiberglass that we do in vehicles. But that still doesn't seem to be the solution. We all want to get to work on time, and we want to make sure that Metro's on time, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a problem, but I will take that back, most definitely. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mr. Horn. I'm on Branch Avenue. I'm a cyclist myself. And this may be overreaching, but is there a way within that budget that you're proposing for 2019, we can get some cameras or extra stop signs, or maybe even some speed bumps. I'm speaking of which because I'm on Branch Avenue. And that little stretch from Pennsylvania Avenue down to Randall Circle, well, that's a speedway. And a lot of I don't know if they're residents of Ward 7 or they're coming from the suburbs, but people that come through this community, they don't stop at stop signs. It's a tap and go. And sometimes it's just a go. And there are elderly people in this neighborhood, there are children in this neighborhood, but nobody seems to be raising a fuss. The police that allegedly police this community don't do anything. I think there's a lot of donuts coming out of 7-Eleven, and they're kind of chillaxing. So I don't know if you have any ideas, or the people on your committee have any ideas, but it's a very serious matter. And I've seen cars speed past police officers coming from Pennsylvania Avenue down to Randall Circle just to get on to Minnesota Avenue. And there's not nay fuss about it. So.
Well, I know that we have a Citizens Transportation Committee, and are you aware of that? And do you have members from this organization on it?
We have one person.
Okay. So.
I'll share it with her, Robin Murphy.
All right, well, that's important because, again, we want to cut down on the fatalities for sure. And more than that, we want to have people kind of slow down. But I tell you, what I see in the morning, it's very difficult to get people to slow down in the morning. Very difficult. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask, why don't the cyclists have whistles? It's a vehicle, so a whistle would be just like a horn. I just think that they need to have whistles when they're riding.
We have bells,
they're
but
not allowed.
yeah, you just don't, because if your music is going and your windows are up, you're not, like we've been hit a few times, almost hit, not hit, almost. But it's just that they don't. I don't think they're obviously trying to hit us. It's just they don't see us, and then you're like ding 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 ding. You're like literally like on the bell, and it's like, oh, they don't hear you, they don't see you.
I think that it's a bigger transportation issue.
With the horn, with the squeeze, honk honk, but that's
Still not.
I'm just trying to see if we can come up with any ideas for solutions.
Well, I was going to say, I think we're kind of skirting around a bigger transportation issue that Pennsylvania Avenue is bad. The worst part of my commute is getting out of the neighborhood to get on Pennsylvania Avenue, so I don't understand why we can't have the timing of the lights. Like, that seems like something that DDOT should be able to handle, which probably doesn't impact the budget, but it would change the quality of life for all the people that live around here. And then also, I can't help but think, when we're talking about housing and adding new people and adding new developments, that's more traffic. I'm not excited. I want some stuff. But I'm not excited about more cars when I understand why people do illegal things in the morning when it takes you 20 minutes just to get out the neighborhood. I get it.
We can talk about traffic a long time because where I live, it takes me, sometimes I do 2 lights before I can get on New Jersey Avenue. So I know what you mean, but I don't know how we beat this horse any deader than it is, but we know that it is a big problem. I do know that DDOT announced 2 months ago that they were beginning the process of looking at every light in the city, traffic light, and they were trying to create a schedule that works. Now, I guess an association like yours could help them by making sure that they have a sense of volume of traffic that is coming out from the side streets onto Pennsylvania Avenue. Now, they probably have done traffic studies, but I think when you add the anecdotal information, people can see it a little clearer than just numbers. And of course, you and I know that the more noise you make, the more likely you're to get resolution. And this sounds like a problem definitely here in this community. Nothing else?
You know, I see two questions over here. Hold on, let me, one more.
Mine was just a comment. I'm Kevin. I live at the bottom of Pennsylvania. On the upside, I want to say the 39 bus is a wonderful bus. On the downside, it's wonderful when it shows up, which is
The bus.
50% of the time for me anyway, where I live. But it's a great bus, and I see it as a commuter bus for those of us who work. The W4 where I live, that's basically the public school bus. But most of all of us sitting on 39 are just going to work up Pennsylvania Avenue. But like I said, it's kind of hit or miss where it shows. I know that's not your purview, but I just wanted to throw that out there to everyone.
Let me ask you, are you in favor of increasing the bus fare? I saw your eyes, but
I mean, for me personally, I work for the federal government and they pay for my bus. So I don't really, I'm not trying to put everyone else out there, but they do. I'd like to see the bus show up.
Yes, sir.
So I think I would be in favor if the quality of the transportation becomes better, right? I think, really, I think if the public transportation gets better organized, where you have dedicated bus lines, for example, I think Pennsylvania Avenue could be definitely accommodate dedicated bus lines. Buses have the ability to control the lights. So there are many solutions like that, right? So I'd be happy to pay $1 more if that gets me downtown 10 minutes quicker.
Right.
Right. But I think if the bus is stuck with everyone else, right? If I walk faster the 2 miles down to Potomac Avenue, then I get from here to there. I mean why should I pay more? Right? So I think there's a quality issue, and definitely smart things that can be done, and I think these things need to be done to really justify the increases that are proposed.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear that recommendation because we just had a discussion about it this morning down at the council. And the issue is Metro is asking for us to help remedy the financial situation. And one of the things they're thinking about is increasing the bus fare. And I always get a little exercised about that because the bus fare affects people in the city. The Metro fare affects usually people outside of the city. And already we are carrying the larger load with Metro. But I appreciate your comments because they make a lot of sense. The only thing is the motorists will probably be concerned because most of our main streets are not wide enough to create the kind of lane that we would like to have, or we would reduce the auto lane to 1 lane in both directions. And I'm not sure that would fly. And then if we add a bike lane, when we talk about these things, we've got to begin to visualize what we're saying.
But I think, I think this is, if you talk like this, I think you're sort of like taking away the ability to really think about smartly how we deal with traffic and with bus lane. So I think I think there are other ways, like why don't we build a big parking lot somewhere outside where the commuters can park their cars and come in. I mean, there's I think why don't we keep the cars out? Why is there not a congestion charge in the city? I think there are very good ideas and models out there that we can look at and that can address some of these issues. So I think keeping the cars out of the city would be a very important goal, right? And I think I don't see that talked about at all because that's a really sacred cow because everyone wants to get from the door at home to the door at the place in the car. And that can't be the solution necessarily for the city.
Well, one of the things that the District of Columbia is restricted from doing is levying what we call a commuter tax. And that's why you don't hear a lot of discussion about that type of process. However, there is a bill before us now. It's a carbon tax. So we're talking about the environment. I think that's a way that we get to where we need to as it relates to auto congestion in the city. So we're looking at that very closely now. Yeah, yeah. Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with the slug line?
The
Slug line is a ride sharing that focuses mainly on Northern Virginia.
Well, I know about it. It's been around for 20 years or more, where persons hop a ride in the suburbs. They have these common parking lots and they just come in. You may not be with the same person or driver each day, but you come in that way. And it's really used a lot in Virginia. The problem we have with Maryland and Virginia is really one of great difficulty. Virginia feels that, they just feel that they don't have to pay anymore. Okay. And Maryland, they have never seen a tax that they like. So that's really, and that's what they're saying. So that's really the hardship that we're faced with. However, in the District of Columbia, the metro is one of our lifelines. It brings those commuters in, and they eat at our restaurants, and they spend a dime here and there. They add to the vitality of the community. So we need them coming into the city so that we can keep our small businesses. But it is a very difficult choice if we, the District of Columbia, have to foot the bill for the metro. Councilmember Jack Evans, who also is chair of the Metro Board, indicated this morning that they're looking for $1.9 billion. And right now, we do $350 million. So you can see what that tab would be if we had to come up with the lion's share. So that's the dilemma that we're in, and the federal government doesn't seem too interested, at least this federal government, in stepping up and assisting. So, but sooner or later, we have to come up with a solution, because I think we have about 1,400 cars, and we have major leakage in the tunnel on the Red Line. It's built through solid rock, but it leaks now. And so that means whatever repairs that we do, the lines are wet. So we need to do what they call encase it in order for it to be successful. Our subway line was built in the 60s, 70s. And so it's time for it to have some refreshment, so to speak. We also are a one-line system. Most systems nowadays are 3- and 4-line systems. So that's why when something happens, it stops the system, pretty much. So that's
David, you have...
Okay, two quick questions or thoughts. One, back around when you talk about the ride share or riding into the city, perhaps some of the churches on the main roads that have parking lots could be park and ride to help incentivize this notion of folks parking and then catching the bus in. Might be something to think about with some of the pastors that are along 16th Street, along Pennsylvania Avenue, that have nice large parking lots. So that's one thing to think about. The other piece, you have a number of legislation around seniors and housing. Would encourage you to think about two-generation housing. So to preserve the seniors that live in the district and staying in the district, encouraging them the transformation of the houses so that perhaps they can have apartments to take on some of these millennials. So this idea of a two-generation housing for seniors such that they can keep their housing, stay in their housing, and maybe rent out their basement apartments to millennials.
Well, thank you very much for that last comment and first one as well. The last comment takes us right to the thought behind the accessory dwelling unit. And so we're hoping that that's one of the ways it will be used.
David has a question, and after that, we'll start.
I'll just pop out here and just...
David, the lawyer, who will tell you all about the development.
So first of all, thank you, Councilmember Bonds. He is a strong supporter of Marshall Heights, and we appreciate that. But two things is that we talked about transportation. I just have a simple request. Well, I think it's simple. Is the circular, right? So the circular stops on, I think, the other side of the river. I mean, it doesn't come. So I would like just to extend the circular to, just say, Pennsylvania Avenue and Branch. I mean, we too can kind of jump on the circular and enjoy the Smithsonian, so they can just...
On down to Fort Davis.
Okay. Now, you think we can get it to come here? Okay, so it comes here. It comes past the Penn Branch.
No,
Penn Branch.
no, it goes to
Yeah,
Skyline.
so Pennsylvania Avenue and Branch, if we, yeah, Skyline, if we can catch it here at Pennsylvania Avenue and Branch, I think that would be hugely helpful for the people here. Just extend it, you know, where it is now to Pennsylvania Avenue and Branch. I think maybe that's a simple, cheap idea, because I live right down the street on Branch and Randall Circle, and I get my exercise as I walk up and catch the circle. The second thing, I think a long-term fix is, I think the last metro before it goes northeast stops at Armory Stadium, and then on Pennsylvania Avenue is Potomac. I think it's a great idea to have a metro, but it's a long capital plan to come again to Penn Branch, right? So I can catch the metro, walk up the street, catch the metro, and get to, you know, the airport or Union Station and fly out. So if we can do that, I will contribute all of $20 to help close the funding gap. So if you can take that back to Jack and say that he came to a Penn Branch meeting, you got funding, you don't have to tell him how much, for a metro station at Penn Branch, and everybody raise your hand that thinks a metro station at Penn Branch is a great idea. See, unanimous. And the circular? Oh man, we got a circular and a metro station in one meeting.
All right. Well, thank you all for your ideas, but of course you all know that the metro was originally designed to be a commuter way of transportation, to bring in the federal workers and take them out and alleviate transportation issues on our streets. And here we are today stuck with it. Because we're now, because we're a thriving community and we have our needs at the neighborhood level. I'm hoping that when we have some of the planning sessions where you get to talk a lot about transportation, that you'll come out and share your ideas. I think it would be very, very important. But of course, my committee is, my committee is housing. And we've done a lot with seniors because seniors, the Office on Aging is also in the committee, as is the returning citizens, the ANCs. Those are the kinds of things that are there in our committee. But one of the things I'm most concerned with today is what will happen with the federal budget. Because if the federal budget decides to cut out some of the items that are currently used to help build affordable housing we will have difficulty here. You may know about the DC Office of, it's really the Housing Finance Agency. It's private in that it's independent from the rest of the government, and for the most part, we use it as our bank. And there's a process called private activity bonds. And that's the process by which the federal government enables these housing finance agencies, there's one in each state, to actually transact business, to raise money in order to build affordable housing. And if we are hit by this tax being, opportunity for this tax to be reduced, or if it ends, then we in the District of Columbia will be stuck with maybe enough resources to do a year and a half of projects. And so we're very nervous about that right now, because while we've talked a lot about transportation, and I'd like to tell you, well, we've got to be like Puerto Rico, unfortunately, and figure out how to make do with what we have, for now. That's not the solution. But the solution for us with housing may be that if Congress takes that kind of action to eliminate this process, then we may be today seeing pretty much the end of opportunities for affordable housing in the city. So we're a little concerned about that, and I hope that it will not happen, and I hope that good Democrats and some good Republicans across the country are paying attention to this, and will know what it will mean. It'll be devastating to urban areas like the District of Columbia.
I just wanted to ask, how can the government allow that to happen?
Well, if you've been paying attention to how this federal budget is being developed, I call it budget, but it's really their tax bill. The goal is to make sure that those who've been making a lot of money, I think it's called now the 2%. One time it was the 1%, now it's the 2%, that they continue to have substantial profits. And in order to do that, it means that other parts of, I guess, the tax resources, which are what we put in when we pay our taxes, it has to go in that direction, as opposed to some of the social programs that it has characteristically been allocated to. So that's what will happen. So just not on a downer. Come on, let's get back up. We don't want to be on a downer. Now, I don't know how many Democrats are in this room, but I suspect quite a few, given what's going on at the national scene. But seriously, I hope that you, if you're a Democrat, if you're not a Democrat, just being a member of society here in the District of Columbia, that you applaud what happened the other day in Virginia and other places around. And I especially applaud it, and I hope the women here do too, because us women, we did it. We did it. We brought home the bacon, meaning that we can bring home the whole hog into the future. And that's how we're looking at it. Today I had the honor of going to a luncheon. That's why I'm saying all this. I remembered the luncheon today with Nancy Pelosi and women members of Congress. And they were just celebrating, and I felt very honored to be there with them. I got an invitation from one of the congresspersons to come. And that's why, because in the District of Columbia, in the last presidential election, we did more volunteers, made more phone calls than any other jurisdiction in the country, including California. So, if you participated in that in any way, trying to get out the Democratic vote, Thank you very, very much, and I hope that you'll continue to do that. And I know people are saying, what is a Democrat? A Democrat is you and me, and those of us that believe in community and want to make it strong and solvent again. So, thank you.
No, so thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it, Councilmember Bonds, for coming down, taking his time. Thanks a lot for you all. I know we have a lot of questions, so stay tuned. We'll post other announcements on the website. By the way, based on the conversation here, we're already looking at our next speaker. I think it's appropriate. We've been talking about getting somebody from DDOT here. I hear a lot of transportation questions, and I figured let's just get the director of DDOT and address those questions, because everything we've talked about, from housing to Penn Branch to development to the bicycles, they all point to one person. So why don't we, unless you all want somebody else, let me just ask now, what do you think? Okay, so we'll do that. And the final thing I'll say is, if you're sitting next to somebody you don't know, before you leave, introduce yourself. Our neighborhood is growing quite a bit. We have houses that, I know the Williams Coalition in the back, ignore them. By the way, we do have Karen Williams, our State Board of Education, Ward 7 representative, but she's also president of the State Board of Education citywide. So it's good to have that in Ward 7. So thank you, Karen, for all you do. And I was a campaign manager too, so. But anyway, thank you so much.
Hey, wait, was that a shout out for me or you?
Yeah, definitely for Karen. Karen, quite seriously, Karen and Earl, thank you. David, thank you very much. Councilwoman Bonds, Councilmember Bonds, thank you very much. And before we adjourn, definitely. Any other questions? Okay, so thank you. If there's no questions, stay tuned. The website will be updated. We know who we want for the next meeting. Thanks a lot. Introduce yourself to somebody going out, and I officially make a motion to adjourn this meeting. So moved. Adjourn.